With her quiet, introverted appearance, Jasmine had become a perfect target at her new school. The moment the bullies cornered her in a secluded spot and tried to choke her, she knew it was time to use her 5 years of mixed martial arts training. Until that day, no one at school knew who she really was. Westlake High School was one of the most prestigious educational institutions in the city. Its impressive red brick buildings, spacious grounds, and elaborate sports facilities were located in one of the best neighborhoods in town. The century-old oak trees in its garden were living witnesses to the school's deep-rooted history. On the walls of its corridors, photographs of famous alumni and championship trophies were proudly displayed. This school wasn't just a place of education, it was also a status symbol. The school population was predominantly white and from wealthy families. Most students were children of doctors, lawyers, and CEOs. Luxury cars lined the parking lot, driven by 17-year-olds. Even the school uniforms were specially tailored by luxury brands. Jasmine Carter knew this reality before transferring to Westlake, but she had no other choice. Her father, Robert Carter, had started working as a senior engineer for an international technology company, and the family had moved here from the suburbs of Chicago. Jasmine felt her difference from the first day. As a black girl, she was already a minority. Only about 5% of the school's 1,200 students were from minority groups. She also stood out with her quiet demeanor, simple clothes, and minimalist style. While other girls wore fashionable clothes and carried luxury bags, she only wore comfortable jeans, basic t-shirts, and sneakers. She wasn't enthusiastic about fashion and makeup. Her passions were different. Jasmine didn't want to draw attention. She wanted to quietly adapt to the new school and focus on her classes. However, her past experiences had taught her something. Sometimes the less you try to draw attention, the more noticeable you become. On her first day at school, as Jasmine studied the building map trying to find her classrooms, she noticed students in the corridor eyeing her. Some looks were curious, some surprised, and some openly hostile. She had spent her first 2 classes without talking to anyone. At lunch, she sat alone with no one approaching her. "Looks like a new loser has arrived," she heard a girl giggle behind her. "Natural hair? Seriously? This is 2025, said another voice. Jasmine ignored these comments. She had faced similar situations at her old school, but what mattered to her was adapting, finishing school, getting into a good university, and making her family proud. What other students thought didn't matter to her. On the third day of her first week at school, as Jasmine entered the cafeteria, she felt the gaze of 3 male students sitting at a table. Brandon Reynolds, the captain of the school football team, was an athletic student standing at 6 feet 2 inches. With his blonde hair, blue eyes, and handsome face, he had won the admiration of most girls at school. Beside him, Trevor Michaels and Cody Wilson were other star players on the team. All 3 were at the top of the school's status hierarchy with their clothing, behavior, and confidence. "Hey, new girl," Brandon called out, raising his voice loud enough to be heard from the other end of the cafeteria. "Are you lost?" The janitor's entrance is at the back. Giggles rose from the surrounding tables. Jasmine pretended not to hear and continued moving forward with her tray. "I'm talking to you," said Brandon, now standing up. "Aren't you going to answer? Or don't you speak English?" Jasmine still wasn't reacting. She headed to an empty table and sat down. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She had been training in mixed martial arts, MMA, for 5 years, and discipline had taught her control. She remembered Sensei Jackson's words, "The true warrior is one who avoids fighting." She wouldn't fall for Brandon and his friends' provocations. Brandon saw Jasmine's lack of response as a sign of weakness. This encouraged him even more. In the following days, bullying became systematic. Shoulder bumps in the corridor, whispers behind her in class, derogatory comments shared on social media. Jasmine's school lockers were accidentally opened several times, her books scattered on the floor. Once, her lab partner was instructed to do the project alone without waiting for her. In the school bathroom, she saw "Jasmine Carter, get out" written on one of the walls. Jasmine's patience was wearing thin, but she had promised her father. "Just focus on your schoolwork," her father had said. "We don't have the luxury of changing schools again. You'll be going to university next year anyway." Jasmine had promised she wouldn't cause trouble. Besides, she needed to be careful for her MMA career. Getting involved in an altercation could lead to disqualification. The problem was that sometimes trouble found you, even if you weren't looking for it. On Thursday after school, Jasmine was leaving the library. She had been researching for her physics project and hadn't noticed how the hours had passed. The school had almost emptied. The corridors had quieted. As she was about to get her books from her locker and go home, she saw Brandon, Trevor, and Cody coming toward her. There was a troubling look in all three of their eyes. "Here she is," said Brandon, with an unpleasant smile on his face. "You need to learn not to give disrespectful answers to people." Jasmine tried to back away, but the three boys quickly cornered her. Trevor and Cody stood on either side of her, while Brandon stood in front, completely blocking her path. The corridor was deserted. Even if she called for help, no one would hear. "I haven't disrespected anyone," Jasmine said, her voice calm but determined. "I just want you to leave me alone." "Did you hear that, boys?" said Brandon, looking at Trevor and Cody. "The princess wants us not to bother her. But that's not her decision, is it? Westlake is our school. We decide who's welcome here." Trevor and Cody laughed meaningfully. Brandon took another step closer, now completely invading Jasmine's personal space. "Listen to me," Brandon said, his voice threatening. "We have ways of dealing with unwanted people here. Either you show us respect or—" "Or what?" said Jasmine, not taking her eyes from Brandon's. This resistance surprised Brandon, but also angered him. "Who do you think you are to answer me like that?" he hissed. He suddenly reached out, grabbed Jasmine by the collar, and pushed her towards the wall. "Don't you understand that there's no place for people like you here?" "Let go of me," Jasmine said, her voice still calm but determined. "Or what will you do?" said Brandon, his face now just inches from Jasmine's. "You're nobody. You're nothing." "Or what will happen? Or very bad things could happen to you," he said as his hand now moved towards Jasmine's throat. At that moment, something changed. The fear in Jasmine's eyes suddenly vanished and was replaced by a calm focus. Time seemed to slow down. As Brandon's hand approached her throat, Jasmine sprang into action. Years of training kicked in. With one fluid motion, Jasmine first grabbed Brandon's wrist, then skillfully used her elbow to free herself. At the same time, she positioned her feet in a balanced stance. Her movement was so fast and graceful that even Trevor and Cody couldn't understand what had happened. Before Brandon knew what was happening, he found himself leaning against a wall, his arm twisted behind him. Jasmine had executed the move so quickly and expertly that Trevor and Cody froze in place. "What? What are you doing?" Brandon stammered with surprise and pain. "Protecting myself," Jasmine said in a calm voice. "Now listen to me. I am not a victim of you or anyone else. I've been training in MMA for 5 years and I'm a state champion. If you continue to be disrespectful about me and other students, next time I won't be so gentle." Brandon's eyes widened. Trevor and Cody took several steps back, with clear expressions of fear on their faces. "MMA?" said Trevor. "Mixed martial arts? Cage fighting?" This is impossible," said Cody. "You're just a quiet little girl." Jasmine smiled slightly. "That's your first mistake, judging people by their appearance." She released Brandon's arm and stepped back, still in a defensive stance. Brandon straightened up, rubbing his shoulder, still with an expression of shock in his eyes. "Can I go now?" Jasmine asked, not taking her eyes off the three boys. Brandon nodded, rubbing his shoulder. There was still surprise on his face, but also a bit of respect beginning to form. Are you really a martial arts champion? Midwest Youth MMA Championship winner? 3 years in a row," said Jasmine. "If you're curious, you can find it on the internet. Jasmine, the Silent Storm Carter." This name triggered something in Cody's mind. Unlike his friends, he closely followed martial arts. "Wait, are you that Jasmine Carter? The Silent Storm? I've watched your videos. You're the girl who won the tournament in Chicago last month." Jasmine nodded. "Yes, that's me. And let's be clear, I'm not looking for a fight here. I just want to focus on my education and finish school without bothering anyone. But I don't hesitate to protect myself and others." Cody started smiling like a fan. "This is amazing. I watched that spinning kick of yours in the finals. how you took down your opponent. Trevor seemed surprised at his friend's reaction. Cody, you're losing your seriousness. Brandon swallowed, trying to compose himself. His prestige as the bully king of the school was at risk. This, this doesn't change anything, he said, but his voice wasn't as confident as before. It changes everything, said Jasmine, because now you know I'm not an easy target. And if you're smart, you'll stop bullying other people too, because one day you'll target the wrong person. With those words, she slung her bag over her shoulder and walked through the three stunned boys. She left school, leaving the still shocked bullies behind. In the school parking lot, her father was waiting. Robert Carter, noticing his daughter was late, had come to pick her up. Sitting in his old model Honda Civic, he saw Jasmine coming out of the school. He immediately noticed the change in his daughter's face. Usually quiet and thoughtful, Jasmine now walked more upright, her eyes looking more determined. "You're waiting," said Jasmine as she got into the car. "You were late, I was worried," said her father. "Is everything okay?" Jasmine hesitated for a moment. She wanted to tell him what happened at school, but she didn't want to worry him either. Besides, she had solved this situation herself. Perhaps finding this power within herself was the best part of the day. "Just a long day," she said with a smile. "I was working on my physics project." Her father looked at her suspiciously but didn't push. Robert Carter knew his daughter well. When Jasmine wanted to share something, she would come and tell him herself. "Well, dinner's ready. Your mom got off early today. She made your favorite meal." When they got home, Jasmine's mother, Angela, was working in the kitchen. The woman smiled as soon as she saw her daughter. "Here comes my university candidate. How was your day today?" "Good," said Jasmine, hugging her mother. "A bit busy, but it's fine." Angela examined the expression on her daughter's face. "Are you sure? You seem like something happened." "Really, Mom? Everything's fine." During dinner, the family discussed daily topics. Robert talked about a new project at work. Angela about her nursing duties at the hospital. Jasmine listened carefully, occasionally smiled, but her mind was still occupied with what had happened at school. After dinner, Jasmine went up to her room. She looked at the MMA championship medals and trophies hanging on the wall. When she first encountered this sport, she was just 12 years old and wanted to defend herself. She had also been bullied at her previous school. Sensei Jackson had seen her potential and helped her develop her skills. Over the years, Jasmine had grown not only technically, but also mentally, gaining confidence. Today, she had seen the fruits of that training. When she checked her phone, she saw that school social media groups had started talking about her. Someone had found a photo of her from the Chicago tournament, sharing the moment Jasmine had taken down an opponent. Comments were rapidly increasing. "Is this real? Is Jasmine Carter an MMA champion? Did you see Brandon's face?" He was completely shocked. "The silent storm. Even her name is cool. Cody has become Jasmine's fan LMAO." Jasmine smiled and put down the phone. It was interesting how, when she showed herself as she truly was, people began to see her differently. That night, she texted her father, "Tell Sensei Jackson hi. I had to use what he taught me today." The reply came within a few minutes. "I'm proud. Are you safe?" "Yes," Jasmine wrote. "I'm even better." The next morning, Jasmine entered school quietly as usual. However, today, the reactions were different. As she walked through the corridor, students looked at her with respect, some greeting her. There were those who whispered her name, pointed at her. In chemistry class, when the teacher called her saying she had no partner, 3 people immediately volunteered. This had never happened before. At lunch, Jasmine would have sat alone as usual, but something unexpected happened. A girl approached her table. Zoe, a quiet girl from the art club. Being Asian American, Zoe was someone who, like Jasmine, was hesitant to show herself. "May I sit?" Zoe asked with a hint of hesitation in her voice. "Sure," said Jasmine with a smile. "I heard what people are saying about you," said Zoe, placing her tray on the table. "Is it true? Are you really an MMA fighter?" Jasmine nodded. "I've been training for 5 years." "That's amazing," said Zoe, her eyes shining with admiration. "I want to learn how to defend myself too. Brandon and his friends, they bully me too." Jasmine's face turned serious. "For how long?" Almost a year, said Zoe. My dad's a painter. We're not very wealthy. I come here on a scholarship. They call me the poor girl. Jasmine looked at the girl across the table. She recognized the vulnerability in Zoe's eyes. She had once been the same, a girl who felt worthless, who couldn't find her voice. An idea began to form in Jasmine's mind. Maybe, maybe I could show you some moves for defending yourself. A glimmer of hope appeared on Zoe's face. Really? Sure, said Jasmine. Actually, we could think about starting a club. Self-defense club for everyone. Not just for physical defense, but also for mental strength. This idea spread throughout the school that afternoon. Zoe had told her friends in the art club, and they had told others. The next day, several girls and even some boys approached Jasmine asking about the club. Most were students who had been bullied in some way. Interest was so great that Jasmine decided to formally apply to the school administration. Principal Mrs. Harris met Jasmine's proposal with surprise. Known for her strict discipline, Mrs. Harris was a conservative educator in her 50s. A self-defense club? Do you think there's enough interest for this? There is, ma'am, said Jasmine determinedly. Just today, 15 students showed interest. Most students want to empower themselves, to feel safe. This is not just a physical exercise, but also a mental discipline. Mrs. Harris looked at Jasmine over her glasses. I didn't know you were a martial artist, Carter. Yes, ma'am. I've been training for 5 years. I won the Midwest Youth Category Championship 3 years in a row. The principal searched for something on her computer. Yes, I see it here. Impressive. What about supervision? You'll need a teacher or coach. I've spoken to the physical education teacher, Mr. Rodriguez. He's willing to support. The principal finally agreed, and thus the first self-defense and personal empowerment club of Westlake High School was born. The small studio of the gymnasium was reserved for the first meeting. On the big day, Jasmine was a bit nervous. This was the first time in her life she would assume a leadership role. When she entered the gym, she was surprised to see that, while 12 students were expected, nearly 30 had come. Most were girls, but there were also male students. Hello, everyone, said Jasmine, stepping in front of the group. Welcome to the Westlake Self-Defense Club. My name is Jasmine Carter. I've been training in MMA for 5 years, and I want to share some basic techniques with you. The first lesson was spent on simple defensive stances, balance, and awareness techniques. Jasmine, as Sensei Jackson had taught her, showed the students mental focus first, then physical techniques. Real power, she told the group, begins not in our muscles, but in our minds. Believing in yourself is the first step. At the end of the lesson, most students looked enthusiastic and energetic. Zoe approached Jasmine. This was amazing. I already feel stronger. This is just the beginning, Jasmine said with a smile. If you practice regularly, you'll see a great change in yourself. Interestingly, the following week, Brandon also applied to join the club. Jasmine found him waiting outside the gym. Why do you want to be here? Jasmine asked suspiciously. Brandon's normally proud posture had given way to a shy demeanor. That day in the corridor, I felt powerless for the first time in my life. I didn't like it, but it also taught me something. Real power isn't bullying. Jasmine waited with a skeptical expression on her face. I want to change, Brandon continued. I'm used to always being the strong one. On the football field, at school, everywhere. But what you did, this is a different kind of power. I want to learn that too. Jasmine thought for a while. The purpose of the club wasn't to exclude, but to include. Okay, she said finally, but I have a few rules. First, everyone is equal here. Second, we never use what we learn to hurt others. And third, respect is the foundation of everything. Brandon nodded. Understood. In the following weeks, Jasmine showed the same care to all students, not giving Brandon any special treatment. Initially, some students were uncomfortable with Brandon's presence, especially those who had previously been bullied by him. But over time, they saw that he was really trying to change. Brandon, surprisingly, became one of the hardest working members of the club. While his aptitude for sports gave him an advantage, he learned to be humble and to cooperate with other students. Once, while showing basic stances to a new student, Jasmine noticed his patient and supportive attitude. Good job, said Jasmine during a break in the lesson. I think there might be a good trainer inside you. Brandon looked surprised. Me? No, I don't know. Maybe learning to help others. That's exactly it, Jasmine said with a smile. The popularity of the club increased every week. New members joined, some bringing their friends. Jasmine taught the students not only physical techniques, but also methods of mental focus, stress management, and confidence building. Over time, the impact of the club began to be felt throughout the school. The atmosphere in the corridors had changed. Students interacted with each other more respectfully. Small tensions were quickly resolved, prevented from turning into major conflicts. Most importantly, bullying incidents at school decreased noticeably. One day, Mrs. Harris called Jasmine to her office. "Carter, I'm proud of you," said the principal, smiling from behind her desk. "Your self-defense club has created a positive change in the school. Our disciplinary cases have decreased by 30%. Jasmine smiled modestly. "Thank you, ma'am. The district director wants to expand your program to other schools. We can call it the Empowerment Initiative. What do you think?" Jasmine's eyes sparkled. "That would be great. Perhaps this could be something that sets you apart from other candidates in your university application. It shows your leadership skills." This was an unexpected development for Jasmine. She had always been a good student, but the opportunity to contribute to the community in this way was a new door for her. That day after school, Jasmine saw a group of students surrounding a newly arrived boy. This was a group of children led by Brandon's old friends, Trevor and Cody. The new student was a small, bespectacled boy. Jasmine immediately headed there. "Is there a problem?" she asked, approaching the group. Trevor turned around with an uncomfortable expression on his face. "Nothing, Carter. Just talking." "It doesn't look that way," said Jasmine, looking at the new student. "Are you okay?" The boy looked tense but nodded. "I'm fine, just trying to find my way." "Okay, I can help you," said Jasmine, taking the boy's arm. Then she turned to Trevor and Cody. "You two will be at the club meeting on Monday, won't you?" The boys reluctantly nodded. "Good. I think I'll have a chance to practice new techniques until then," she said, smiling slightly. They both understood what she meant. "We're coming," said Cody. "No problem." Jasmine directed the new student outside the school. "My name is Jasmine." "Who are you?" "Michael. Michael Lee," said the boy. "I'm new here. We moved because of my dad's job." "Welcome, Michael." "The first days at Westlake can be tough, but don't worry. We have a community. Your community, a community of people learning to defend themselves and others. If you want, you can join us on Monday." Michael looked doubtful but nodded. "Maybe." "Thanks." This had become Jasmine's new routine at school, defending bullying victims, protecting them, and empowering them. Now other students were following her example as well. Even Brandon had changed his role at school. Once he was seen reprimanding a football player friend for being rude to a newly arrived girl in the cafeteria. All these changes were felt throughout the school. Teachers had noticed the positive interactions among students, increased class participation, and a generally more respectful atmosphere. Some teachers had even joined Jasmine's club, learning self-defense techniques. By spring, Jasmine was awarded a prestigious award given to young leaders who inspire youth across the district. Local newspapers interviewed her, sharing her story. People were reading about how a quiet martial artist had changed the school. Sensei Jackson came to town for the ceremony. The old man proudly watched his student. "You know, Jasmine," he said after the ceremony, "there's something I've always told you. A true warrior not only protects herself, but also protects others. You've achieved that." Jasmine hugged her master. "Thank you, Sensei. I couldn't have done this without your teachings." "No, child. You already had this power inside you. I just helped you bring it out." By May, Jasmine was one of the most respected students at the school. She was giving talks at schools across the district, teaching students the true meaning of power, controlling oneself, respecting others, and defending those in difficult situations. Jasmine began receiving responses to her university applications. Columbia University, her first choice, had accepted her with a full scholarship. She would study bioengineering while continuing her MMA training. She was on her way to realizing her dreams. In the last weeks of school, as Jasmine was walking down the corridor where the lockers were located, she found a note. "Thank you, Silent Storm. You changed my life." It was unsigned, but such notes were now common. Students were expressing how they had been empowered, how they had learned to trust themselves thanks to her. At the graduation ceremony, when Jasmine was invited to the podium to give a farewell speech, the entire school stood and applauded. Brandon, Zoe, and other members of the club sat in the front row, smiling proudly. "When I came to Westlake," she began her speech, "I was trying to hide myself. I just wanted to fit in, not to draw attention. But the most important lesson I learned is this: our true power emerges when we accept ourselves as we are." She scanned the crowd, seeing a different story in each face. Those who had overcome fears, those who had learned to trust themselves, those who had chosen to protect others. Inside each of us, there is a silent storm, a quiet but powerful storm. And this storm, when directed correctly, can change not only ourselves, but also the world around us. As Jasmine finished her words, the students, including Brandon, applauded enthusiastically. Brandon had now completely changed, becoming an advocate against bullying at school. He had also won a sports scholarship to university and was planning to become a youth coach in the future. After the ceremony, Jasmine's father and mother approached their daughter, pride in their eyes. "Sensei Jackson is here too," said her father, pointing to the old trainer standing among the crowd. Jasmine ran and hugged her trainer. "You came. I had to come see your success," said Sensei Jackson with a smile. "But you haven't just won fights, you've won hearts. This is a much more difficult and more valuable achievement." "Sensei is right," said a voice behind her. When Jasmine turned, she saw Brandon. "You changed my life, Jasmine. You changed all our lives." "You changed yourself too, Brandon," said Jasmine with a smile. "I just opened a door. You were the one who walked in." That day, as Jasmine Carter graduated from Westlake High School, the legacy she left behind would be remembered not just as an MMA champion, but as someone who showed how real change can start quietly. When one person stands up and says enough, a school, a community, and perhaps even a world could change. Years later, when Jasmine graduated from Columbia University, she had many achievements: academic successes, championships won in MMA tournaments, recognition as a role model inspiring young girls. But what she was most proud of was still the Westlake Self-Defense Club, which hundreds of students regularly attended every year. The current leader of the club was, surprisingly, Brandon's younger sister. Jasmine would sometimes visit the school, giving seminars. Students always wanted to hear her story: how she was cornered at school, how she defended herself, and then how she laid the foundation for a community. "When you experience bullying, you have choices," she would tell the students. "You either remain a victim or you choose to be strong. But real strength is standing up not just for yourself, but for others too." On her last visit to Westlake, she saw an old poster in the corridor. On it was a photograph of her taken many years ago, and the words, "The Silent Storm." Power doesn't always have to be quiet. This was part of the school's series of inspirational quotes. Jasmine smiled. Sometimes the biggest changes came from the most unexpected sources, and sometimes the biggest storms were born from the quietest ones. Viewers, have you ever experienced bullying in your life? Or perhaps you've had a moment when you showed yourself and people saw you differently. Share your experiences in the comments below. We want to hear your stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Where in the world are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments section. And remember, the storm inside us is just waiting for the right moment to show itself.